Hey everybody, I want to tell you a story that happened to me in the 1980s. I opened my office in 86, and one day an Orthodox Jewish woman came into my office to see if I could help her son. They had been to an alternative chiropractor whose office was down the block. My UPS package, funny, got delivered to him, and that's how he found out that I even existed. Anyway, they came into my office and they wanted to know if I could help her son. And what was going on is that his nearsighted prescription was skyrocketing. And it was just going up and up and up. And they didn't know what to do. So his schooling at that time and still now was that he went to school at 6 a.m, stayed there the entire day, had breakfast, lunch, and dinner there, and then came home at 9 p.m. So he was in school for 15 hours a day. And during most of that day, what he did was he studied a book called the Gemara. And the Gemara is basically a book from the Torah, at least my understanding of it, where there are the laws of Judaism are in it. And what he would do in his day is he would read the book, and then what he would do is he would take what he learned and discuss it with his partner. And then what he would do is then occasionally ask his teacher, it's called a Rebbe, about it. Now, his book is this far away, which is about 16, 18 inches. His partner is about 3 or 4 feet away, and his teacher is only 8 feet away. So he's actually looking at very, very short distances. When his prescription was going up, they took him to other eye doctors, and those eye doctors thought he had a neurological problem because only a mass in his brain could cause his prescription to go up at very high rates. And as is obvious, hopefully obvious to you, he didn't have a mass in his brain. And the reason that he was becoming so nearsighted and it was going up was because of this excessive amount of near focus that he was doing. So now I'm sitting there with them, and I remember that, it was the very, very beginning of my practice, and I barely knew what was going on. But what I did know, and they had confidence in me, just hoping that I could come up with something to do. So I said to myself, if he's only looking in a book, if he's only looking at his partner, if he's only looking at his teacher and everything's no greater than 8 feet away, why don't I correct him for 8 feet? So I gave him glasses that corrected him no greater than 8 feet from his eyes. It was a pretty radical thing to do. What 20/20 is 20/20 is perfect sight. Now what it is actually the ability to see 20 feet away. Well, there was nothing in his life that was 20 feet away. So I said, why not make his 20 feet 8 feet? Now you might say, well, if he could only see greater than 8 feet, how is he going to see when he goes home? Well, he goes home at 9 o'clock at night. It was pitch dark. He would go into a bus. The bus would take him home, and he'd walk into his building. So I thought it was worth a shot. Anyway, so I give him these glasses. The mother thought it was a good idea, and I had no idea if it was going to work. And if I can teach you anything in these things, the real thing we want to remember is just try anything. It may not make sense, but just try it. And you never know what's going to happen. So I sure didn't know. In any event, what happened is that I make the glasses, they leave, they come back 6 months later. They come back 6 months later, and I examine him, and guess what happened? His prescription didn't change. So his prescription, which had been skyrocketing, didn't change. Why not? Because he was corrected for only 8 feet, if he wanted to see the rest or see out to 20 feet, what would happen is his eyes would actually have to relax in order to see better. When the doctor corrects you for 20 feet, corrects you 20 feet away, what happens is that 20 feet is your distance, and everything shorter than that, you're focusing on. So why do we need to focus closer than 20 feet when actually our whole world is 20 feet? Is closer than 20 feet. So it just didn't make any sense to me. So the Orthodox community, to share, is a very, very tight-knit community. And remember, those days was before the internet existed. So before there was an internet, there was, how are people going to tell each other about me or what I did? So what they did is that they communicated by sharing the story of coming to see Dr. Jerry Wintrob. And that's in fact what happened. I became extremely popular in the Orthodox Jewish community because I was the first person to come along and actually have their prescriptions not change. And then, by the way, after learning that, I used that for all my patients. I said, well, why does anyone need to be corrected for 20 feet? Yes, you need to see sharply, but that's only those long distances. But if you think about your world right now is short distances. You're looking at your computer, you're looking at a book, you're in meetings, your kids are sitting in classrooms. Seeing the blackboard is barely 20 feet, or even if it is, we could just have the patient sit closer. So I started undercorrecting everybody and all my nearsighted patients just by doing that. Just by doing that alone, their prescriptions started to slow down. And I did this with this community, and lo and behold, their prescriptions started to slow down. But then I realized that maybe prescribing glasses wasn't enough. And what I would do is I bring them in and I do vision therapy with them. And I would do exercises to help loosen up their focusing, so they didn't focus so hard all day, because that's in fact what they were doing. So if you think about what they were doing, is they were looking at these very, very important Jewish laws, and they had to discuss them and argue the case in some ways the way lawyers read. And so what happened is that they over-focused their eyes at near. It would strain their eyes terribly at near. And so now what I needed to do is I needed to find ways to relax them. So I taught them exercises on how to loosen up their eyes. I gave them exercises on how to breathe into what they were doing and process in a much more relaxed way. Guess what happened? By getting them to process in a more relaxed way, their ability to learn the material got better because they weren't concentrating so hard. The way I argue this is like, let's say you have 10 pounds of energy, okay? You have 10 pounds of energy, and you need all 10 pounds. To study Gemara, you for sure need all 10 pounds. So you need all 10 pounds on your eyes, to process the information. And what if you're using 5 pounds on your eyes? Well, if you're using 5 pounds on your eyes, then you only have 5 left, and then you don't have enough energy to process. Well, what if we could get you to a place where you use 0 pounds on your eyes? So when you use no pounds on your eyes, then you have all your ability and your knowledge to process. And then when you can do that, you can learn at a much higher rate. I'm actually going to make another video, and in that video, I'm going to teach those of you who are Orthodox, by the way, for those of you who are Orthodox and studying this way, I'm going to teach you ways to study in a much more relaxed way. And if I teach you ways to study in a more relaxed way, you'll be able to process this information on a much higher level. Over the years, over the years is 40 years. I worked with many people in the Orthodox community. As a matter of fact, I became so popular. I don't want to get full of myself here, but I became so popular in that community. They used to, I don't remember the Yiddish word for this, but they used to call me the messenger from God. Okay, let's not get too carried away. But that's what they did. And that was by the way, do I believe that I was a messenger from God? In some ways I was. Because I think that it wasn't chance that this kid came into my office and the day that he did. Those parents, those patients, they stayed with me for years and years and years and years. And we did all sorts of work together. I worked with color, I worked with sound. I have other videos, by the way, to share with you about that. But I work with all these different modalities as ways to help them process on a higher level and relax on a higher level. I just want to say that one of the things that I did here is that I took my knowledge and information that I learned from working with the Orthodox community. I used that information and adapted it to all my patients. Because you didn't have to be Orthodox. The fact is that some of my patients adults who work on computers, who are stockbrokers and stuff, they're looking at computer screens for 15, 16, 17 hours a day. And their nearsightedness goes up as well. So I used a lot of the things that I learned in the Orthodox community on everyone. But specifically to the Orthodox community, one thing to say about it is that it's a community that's really, really misunderstood. And they live and work in a very controlled environment. And they do that. I have no problem with that. You know, one of the things about that I said early on is that, wow, you know, maybe he shouldn't study this long. And I said, you know what? That's not fair, because it is not my position to judge anything that he does. And, you know, I give this an analogy of this, which I really like. You know, some of us who, if I told you, I said, oh, I'm going to go to India and meditate in a cave for 15 hours a day, you'd say, oh, wow, what a great thing to do. You know, you're praying and you're connecting to God. Isn't that great? And so how's this any different? This child is studying those laws as a way to connect to God. And so it's just another form of prayer, and not to be judged, actually to be revered. And it's really, over the years, you know, it's been an honor to work in this community, and I have learned so much from them, and hopefully they have learned a lot from me. So tune into my other video about ways to study better in that Gemara study, which I have adapted over years and years and years. Thanks very much.